Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another episode of Future Sox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, sir. How's it going?
Doing all right. Um, so kind of a weird week here. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
signings. I mean, but just not a whole lot of like real note. I mean, obviously we're gonna go through them and all that, but what are your thoughts on this week as far as the roster
Yeah,
management
it's like
went?
lots of off-brand White Sox stuff. It's like stuff that we need to cover, basically. Like there's just a whole bunch of it's like a move a day. It's kind of interesting and a couple of interesting podcasts that we'll obviously get into. Sergio Santos was on with Garfine and Chris Getz sounded human and the best that he's ever sounded on a podcast too. So yeah, that and the in addition to some moves, the international signing period opens Wednesday. So I'll be monitoring that. But yeah, just at least there's some stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's exciting, but it's something to talk about, something to think about. Um, just infinite possibilities for what's going on right now.
Yeah,
This is something we've been talking about for a while where there's going to be so many different options for how they're going to plug and play these guys. It kind of I don't know, it's so much to think about with how many guys are there and where
yeah.
these guys are going to end up.
Well, I will say too, one thing we've talked about an awful lot is the 40-man roster. Obviously, it's getting tougher to subtract guys. Remember the beginning of the offseason where like, yeah, there's like 10 names, like no problem, you could dump. Now, anytime there's a signing, I'm like, ooh, like I don't know, like it's not easy to figure it out. Obviously, what Perez is not announced yet, so there's one 40-man move coming for him. And then other than that, the other stuff that we're going to talk about are minor league deals, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that part's a little bit interesting. Some DFA action coming.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let me go ahead and bring up the first one that you know I don't see that there's really any order to bring these guys up in, but I'm just gonna bring up Josh Rojas. First off,
Yeah, we talked about him briefly last week, but we didn't know much, right? So
yeah, and the contract's not really anything crazy.
yeah, three
And
and a half. I think I said he was due 4+ in ARB and got non-tendered.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I mean, not really a whole lot to expect from a guy that career 92 OPS plus, 91 last year. Um, the one good thing is that, he's fairly solid defensively. And, like most of his, war last year came in April?
yeah, he had a big month. I don't know. Hopefully, he has a big couple months, and then you can trade him. I think that's pretty much the whole game plan with the White Sox. I think the biggest question for him is like, is he like a super utility type who plays every day somewhere else? Is he the second baseman? Is he the third baseman? I don't really know. Like he can play multiple spots. I think when he was signed, I was hoping that he had played more shortstop and that's what the position was going to be. But at this point, it doesn't really seem like that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. And, like the thing that we were just bouncing this around off stream. I just want to go ahead and bring it up now just to get it out of the way. Uh, Shortstop's kind of one of those weird positions for the White Sox this year. We've heard people talking about Colson Montgomery making the opening day roster as a shortstop. Personally, I don't think that I see that happening. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm not going to go as far as saying I don't see it happening, but I hope it doesn't happen. I am not in favor of doing that because I don't like spring training, right? Like I would send Colson down and make him earn it. It has nothing to do with manipulating service time either. Like I don't really think it's that big of a deal. He's going to be a 30-year-old free agent that if he's good, he'll likely extend, I would imagine. So, I don't really care about. I just would rather not start the year with him at shortstop, regardless of how good or badly he plays in spring training. I think at this point it's easy to like look at this 40-man though and speculate that like, oh, it's Montgomery's job. I mean, by Wednesday we could have a veteran shortstop that's signed, and you're like, oh, okay, that's this year's Paul DeYoung or whatever. and there's just a guy on the team. And then it basically solves our issue here. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's totally out of the question. I think a lot of people are talking about it though. Like Colson's going to have the opportunity to win the shortstop job, which, hey, you know, I guess I just wouldn't be a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I don't know if and it's not that I don't see the talent floor being at a spot where a Josh Rojas or something like that is going to be better than him. It's just that I think that a little bit more seasoning would probably be a good idea.
Yeah. The other thing, like we don't know, like how do they feel about Chase Mydroth playing short? Because he played a lot of it in AAA. I think he came over and everybody said like, oh, probably second, which is fine. I just, or do they just not care, or do they just play Baldwin at short, or who, Lenine Sosa's still on the team. I doubt he's playing short, but it could be Brooks Baldwin, it could be any number of people. I just, now Jacob Amaya was DFA'd. I think he was somebody who thought like at least with defensive utility that he could play there, but I mean they're just dumping infielders as they pick up infielders. So at this point, like I think if you had to write out a starting nine, it's what Baldwin probably. I just don't know that they feel that great about that either.
Yeah, I think that's a valid question. I mean, I personally, from what is on the 40 man at this point and what we're looking at, uh, Brooks Baldwin seems to me to be the choice for shortstop just due to the skill set. And I would think that Mydroth would be the second baseman, and that's where his skill set kind of grades out best. That said, everybody that you hear talk about Mydroth is that defensively, the guy's always making plays.
Right.
So, this kind of looks like it's just going to be like a competition thing.
Well, and I think Rojas is probably at second, honestly. Um, just because like they're gonna play Vargas at third, and somebody has to DH. So I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there's another infielder added to the mix too. Nick Nick Ahmed, I think is out there. You have Jose Iglesias is available, but he doesn't really play short anymore. But I mean, just like a veteran like that, I don't think they want to do the Paul DeYoung thing again. But a guy like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting, uh, just the way the depth chart's going to work this year. I think it's going to be a of real interest because there's going to be a lot of quote unquote battles, and we have to see how hard the White Sox are going to make these guys push to get over that hump.
Yeah, agreed.
So the second guy I'll move to is Martin Perez. Um, Picked him up from the he pitched for the Pirates to start the year last year, moved to the Padres, and uh, halfway, when he moved to the Padres, he did change his arsenal a little bit and his pitch mix a little bit, which did affect his whip. But at the same time, it wasn't really a huge shift, but it looked like it's probably somebody that's competent for a number 4. But he's your veteran guy that you probably want to kind of anchor the rotation, being a world champion and former All Star, and that stuff. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of like this one. I think he throws a lot of innings. I think for the money that you're gonna spend, he has the highest upside of a guy that you might be able to like sign and flip for something decent. I mean, what 2 years ago in Texas, he was a 5 WAR pitcher. I mean, I'm not expecting that, but he does eat innings. He was much better in San Diego than he was in Pittsburgh. It's 3.5. It's really 5 million, I think, on a 1 year deal. I didn't even know that they'd spend 5 million on a guy. So I was actually a little bit surprised, and this is gonna sound crazy. I'm surprised they signed a guy like this good and this sure of a like definite rotation piece, honestly, because like you have Bryce Wilson too. I mean, I guess he could move to the pen in theory, but this one was a little bit surprising to me, but I think it's good. I think he could start opening day too.
Yeah, like the rotation kind of is interesting. We see how hard they make these guys, the young pitchers, the starting pitching staff, work to get on the roster and who they can send to AAA and who they just outright release. I mean, I want to throw this out there. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of these guys that they're signing right now just get, dumped after spring training. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. If they think that the White Sox talent is better than these guys that they're bringing in, like if the young guys' talent is better, get rid of them. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's like, if you have four young starters that you definitely want in the rotation, it's easy to just put Bryce Wilson in the bullpen, like somebody's the odd man out here because I think Davis Martin is definitely going to be in the rotation. And I think we were kind of penciling in a couple of other names with Cannon probably for sure. And then Burke and Thorpe were like the two wild cards. We don't know like how healthy Thorpe is. I mean, they say he's fine. Um, and then Burke, I think, has kind of earned a spot, but I mean, he could go to Charlotte. Like, there's nothing stopping that from happening. I mean, there's a lot of kids, and they all have options. So, I think a starter like this makes sense. I thought a lefty made sense. So yeah, I was just a little bit surprised that he had to settle for 5 million, but it works. I think it's a pretty good deal for them.
Uncle Ted's talking my language over here.
Mason Adams.
Yeah.
Yep, not on the 40 man though. So
Yeah. That's another thing is how they are going to manage to work out the 40 man and who's going to get bumped off the 40 man, and then they got to pass through waivers, and either they do or they don't before they get to Charlotte.
yeah, and I think there are some guys that we've speculated about, like since we've talked, that I've kind of heard, like Nick Nastrini. There's like some guys that I just wouldn't consider safe by any means, like on this team, just because they weren't picked up by this front office necessarily. I mean, Getz was in the front office, but none of his lieutenants were here. Bannister wasn't here, so I think Eater and Nastrini are both on the 40 man. I don't know. I don't know that those guys are guaranteed to stay on the 40 man at this point.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things that if you don't perform, you're not going to get space on the 40 man, regardless of whether somebody else is going to poach you. Because, I mean, if you are on literally the worst team in Major League Baseball and you're not on the 40 man for the White Sox, I kind of
Right.
doubt that somebody else is going to pick them up unless they got some severe lack of pitching in their system.
Yeah, the White Sox are going to retire some more people this year. I feel like they did it last year, right? When Mike Moustakas can't hang on that team, like that's about it, right? It's just kind of just the way it goes. And we'll have some more this year when they're signing non-roster invites that don't make the team.
Yeah, when Moose isn't making the team, and last year we were like, oh, when he got signed in the first place, if he can't stick, um, you know, you see what
Well, it's
that
like they
brings.
they they cut Jesse Chavez, and then he went on to have a pretty decent year again.
Yeah, because he only pitches well with the Braves,
Yeah, I
which
know.
has pretty much always been the case, right?
Always. I remember him being on the Braves in Texas like 10 different times.
Yeah, that's that's pretty accurate. So I'm gonna go ahead and move us along here to one that was kind of interesting to me, but at the same time, it's kind of meh. It's Bobby Dahlbeck. White Sox pick up the first baseman from the Red Sox. He had played in AAA last year for the most part. I think he had, let me look here right quick. He had a 16 OPS plus in the major leagues last year, but he did hit 20 home runs in AAA. And
Yeah.
he had 816 OPS last year in AAA.
So he's always had massive power, but he just strikes out so much. I think it was like over 40% clip the last time he spent any time in the big leagues. I was kind of hoping that Bobby Dahlbeck was left-handed, and he's not. I don't know. I think it's kind of a weird signing. Like, I understand, like, maybe you want to put some pressure on Andrew Vaughn, but I mean, like, do you need Bobby Dahlbeck and um Tim Elko and Charlotte like together as two righties. Like I don't really know. It does seem like kind of a lot of money for if he makes the majors. Like I didn't, he's getting 1.2 million if he's in the majors. Um, you know, I think they'll give Kyle Fuller a crack at or Kyle. I always want to say Kyle Fuller, Ryan Fuller. They're gonna
Yeah.
give Ryan Fuller a crack at him, I think, and see. But I mean, I think he's always gonna be kind of a high strikeout guy with big power. He can launch some out of Charlotte, that's for sure. But I think that's probably what it'll end up being. Former pretty decent sized prospect, that just never really made it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. We had this talk off stream here that it's pretty much, and I'll throw this, and I feel bad because I don't want to disparage my guy, but Dalbec and Elko are pretty similar players. They're both right-handed, and they both strike out a bunch, and they both hit home runs. So what's good? What gives it at AAA? You know,
Well, and I was still hoping that they were gonna sign like a lefty guy similar to this. Like I've been talking about it on the stream all year, whether it's Vogelbach or Tellez or like just one of these other like left-handed hitters that you could play in the DH spot against righties. I don't know that that's coming. So
yeah, I kind of am pretty sure that Elko gets the nod ahead of Dahlbeck, but again, that whole competition thing that we've been talking about. There's, people are going to have to be competing for at bats here.
yeah. Well, because Dahlbeck was
Moving,
a college, he was a college pick, right? Dahlbeck, that's why he's older than that.
yeah, he's a fourth rounder, but out of Arizona.
Yeah,
Yep. So, moving along, Omar Narvaez, old friend,
yeah,
gets picked up. Walker McKinven fixed him in Milwaukee. He's the guy that had Omar Narvaez saying, "I didn't even know this stuff was possible. I never heard about any of this stuff with the White Sox."
yeah.
Well, now he's back.
How many catchers do these guys need?
That's a great question because I think we got like 8 now.
Yeah, I mean, I understand having a third catcher. I don't really. I just the issue I think for Omar Narvaez would be like, does he go to Charlotte because you're gonna have Caro and Teal in Charlotte, and we kind of talked about just some other guys that are, you know, a little bit better than org guys, but not ready to be like on a 40 man, like Adam Hackenberg and obviously your guy Michael Turner. Like, do you force guys down to double A? Do you carry three catchers in the big leagues? I don't know. I'm kind of surprised Omar Narvaez couldn't get a backup job somewhere.
I mean, after looking at his stats and knowing that he was hurt the majority of the last 3 seasons, it really doesn't shock me at all. I saw him against Winston-Salem pitching when he was playing for the Cyclones in Advanced A, and didn't look all that great. And then you look at his numbers in, with the Mets, and last year, I mean, granted, he only had 69 plate appearances, but he only hit 100, 154.
Yeah.
So it's just not that good. And we had this, obviously, as you mentioned, we had this talk, you know, between Theis has had a better uh, bat over the last couple of years. Not much, but what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where Corey Lee's going to
Yeah.
go. I don't know that necessarily. Maybe McKinven doesn't think Lee's the guy. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if like if Narvaez went to Double A and split time with Turner.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I guess with Tice, I think he's going to be decent against right-handed pitching. I think he usually has been. So that's why I think he's probably like safe. It's interesting though with Lee. Again, like these guys didn't trade for Corey Lee. Corey Lee does have a minor league option. I can't really see him down though necessarily to add Narvaez to the 40 man. Like just play Corey Lee in the big leagues. Um, but yeah, that one's interesting. Catching is gold according to Chris Getz. So you're just gonna keep signing them apparently.
I mean, if it fits the mo right there. If they're saying that
Yeah.
catchers, the main thing here, then
Like, can you get something you need for Corey Lee? I don't know. I don't know.
I had thought about that. Maybe that they might throw him on the trade market, because I would not be surprised if either Caro or Teal makes the major league roster. That they've got Theis to back him up and kind of help him along, and then they send Omar Narvaez to Double A. Teal gets Triple A or Caro gets Triple A. You know, with I don't know, possibly Hackenberg, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Hackenberg get launched either,
Right?
because
Yeah.
the bat has just not been it.
No. No, and he's already in the high minors where it's like defense only, and the defense isn't that good. So
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. So Corey Julks did get DFA'd and he did make it through.
he's back.
So
Yeah.
he's in AAA. Um, not anything impressive really with the White Sox. I mean, he filled a role and played some okay defense out there, but the bat wasn't really happening a whole lot.
Yeah, in the outfield, I mean, I think what the one tenuous outfield spot is Oscar Colas. Like I don't know that they want to DFA Oscar Colas. I mean, maybe that's the way that you trade him for something is by DFAing him. I think they'd rather trade him to somebody if they could potentially, but yeah, I mean, he's just I don't think he's in the plans. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was brought up earlier in the chat about Oscar Colas and him getting launched off the 40 man. And I wouldn't be surprised by that either. We've heard issues with maturity, and clearly he hasn't developed as much as they were hoping. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got pulled.
Right, and the two guys that really liked him in the org are no longer employed by the White Sox. So
Well, there's that as well.
yeah,
So the other guy that I've got to bring up here is Andre Lipsis, who is a 20. I think he's 26, if I remember correctly. He's a second baseman. Uh, you know, he's drafted by the Tigers. They poached him out of the Dodger system, and he had an 800 OPS. But granted, that was in the PCL last year. So,
yeah,
I mean, I have to
Charlotte
imagine. Yeah, I
or
would
double.
have to
Yeah,
imagine AAA. But at the
you got a lot of
again,
guys. You got a lot of guys in AAA, man.
that's so many infielders, so many.
And as we're gonna get to, you put your premium manager in AAA for a reason. It's because you're gonna have prospects there.
Yeah, and I imagine that Riku is going to start in Double A, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fast tracked him if he continues hitting like he was hitting before. So, I mean, we could be looking at like 5 or 6 second basemen that are vying for AAA at bats here. So, I'm kind of thinking that some of these guys are going to have to get launched.
Yeah, yeah. These type of guys don't matter as much as obviously your Chase Mydroths and some of those guys that you want to see actually play. I mean, I think there's a chance that Brian Ramos is in Charlotte, obviously, so he'll be playing. But yeah, a whole host of guys.
Yes, indeed. So let's move on to that then. So I will start with since we only know about the one piece of the Charlotte managerial team, the only guy that we know is going to be there, Sergio Santos got moved from Double A up to Triple A
Yeah,
to take over for Jersley. But his bench coach, the guy who was the manager last year, got moved, and we'll discuss that in a second. But
and so did the
so
Charlotte hitting coach, right? So
yeah, and the Charlotte hitting coach. So we've got a bunch of guys that moved. So my question is, who's going to fill that staff?
I know I was wondering if they just give him his Birmingham staff or if they just change the manager in Birmingham and hire new people for Charlotte. Like I'm kind of curious because the Winston Salem staff is pretty good after they,
Very good.
just kind of reconfigured that. So I don't know. I haven't really thought about like where the I mean like last year the majority of the prospects were in Birmingham. Like this year I don't think it's that way. I think it's going to be Winston and Charlotte, I think at least to start. Other than I mean there's pitching at every affiliate, right? But like there's going to be a lot of important type of guys at Winston-Salem and like a whole bunch at Charlotte. So I don't know. I mean, who's your yeah, I mean, you have Kannapolis to fill and you have Birmingham to fill. So yeah, I'm pretty interested to see what they do. My guess is there's some outside hires coming.
Well, we know for a fact that he can't have his Birmingham pitching coach because John Eli is
Yeah, Johnny
done
Eli's
with
gone.
professional.
Right.
So
So then maybe the pitching coach in Charlotte what stays? It was the who was in Charlotte as the pitching coach?
I'm trying to
Was it the guy from the Rays or no?
I can't remember where he came from. All I can remember is that the name was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's slipping my mind right now. I'm gonna look that up
Yeah,
because
and TJ Johnson brings up Alan Zinter like I wonder like if he takes a hitting coach job instead of being the coordinator. I don't know. And then Fuller and I mean, we do know that um what there was like a new hire that Fuller made, obviously. Um but I took that as more of like a hitting coordinator role than like a hitting coach role. So yeah, there's going to be some hires here. And I would
so
imagine they're hiring at least one outside manager.
I am thinking the same. So to clarify, the pitching coach in Charlotte last year was R.C. Lichtenstein.
Yeah. So he was a Ray, I believe, prior to that.
So yeah, so he'll. I mean, I would think that it's probable that he stays there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of curious, because Cam Seitzer is gone. So now we have to figure out, like Zinter's a roving instructor, So
Right.
are they going to give him a home base? I kind of doubt it. So I kind of think that there's some guys on the horizon here that we haven't heard about yet.
Yeah, you would think so. And I think obviously what they took the AAA bench coach and the AAA hitting coach and put both of them in Winston Salem with what a manager that they really like and Pat Leland. Just a pretty interesting staff down there, and then former White Sox farmhand as well as the pitching coach.
Yeah, Blake Hickman gets moved up to Winston Salem. He's been with the Cannonballers since 2023.
Yeah.
From all the guys that I've talked to, they love working with Blake, so that's cool. Former Ace player, and I don't know if you're interested. He has an Instagram page that way into pitching training. So if you've got a pitcher in your family, go ahead and look that up on Instagram. It's cool. Um, yeah, I don't know. They did also poach a trainer from the Braves, Austin Smith, I believe. Yeah, Austin Smith. And Logan Jones sticks around, who's been
Yeah.
the performance coach there for a few years.
This is like right around the time though that we get these hires though, correct? Or is it usually I mean, it's pretty close to right now they start announcing their player development staff.
And usually they dump them all on the same day.
Usually,
So
that's why I thought
that's
we
why.
were gonna. I thought we were gonna get tweets from the other affiliates because all we got was, Sergio Santos essentially announcing on the Garfine show, and then the Winston Salem coaching staff came out.
Yeah, I wonder if he was given the go ahead for that or not.
Yeah, and he
You
just
know?
did it. Yeah.
Yeah, possible. Um, so I did just drop a tweet, and this is nothing of real any consequence. Going back to the players conversation we were having earlier, you're not going to know any of these names. James and I barely know any of these names, but 9 guys out of the DSL were let go, released from the White Sox 2 days ago. So that's on the Twitter if you're looking at FutureSox on X. You have anything else on what you think about the managerial hires here?
No, I think this. I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna go new, like, do you go with another new hire like in Birmingham? Somebody mentioned Willie Harris. I mean, he doesn't have a job currently. He's been a minor league manager before he took a third base job. He's obviously not going to be a base coach in the big leagues anywhere because I'm pretty sure those jobs are filled. Um, so if Willie Harris wants to work, it's going to be in the minors or in player development for somebody. I have no idea about, his relationship with Getz, any of that sort of thing. So, but I guess, I mean, that is a potential option, I guess, theoretically.
Yeah, I was kind of curious. My whole thought from the beginning was that it was because I had been asked if who I thought would be taking over Double A and if it would be Pat Leland, and I said I didn't think so. I figured I would he would end up at Winston Salem, and then you're probably looking at a fresh name for Birmingham because I don't think that they're retaining
Mm,
um, Kiros.
yeah.
So I'm interested to see. And if they're not, if they are retaining him, I kind of feel like he's going back to Canapolis, if anything. So we've got the Barons and the Cannonballers to figure out who's going to be staffing these managerial positions.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's openings like throughout, obviously, too, like just for other positions. So, yeah, we should know pretty soon.
Yes, indeed. Um, so what do you want to move on to next year? Do you want to go to the international stuff, or do you
Yeah.
want to?
Yeah. We could go to that next. That's fine. And then we
Okay.
can do the pods and extra miscellaneous stuff at the end. So,
So
international market opens Wednesday.
yeah,
Um, Last week I went over some of the signings on the show. My international preview is live on the website. There's been some other written content just like on the internet, like since then though.
yeah. So it's come out that the Dodgers have brought two of their international signings back to the market. I did have that tweet up, but
Yeah,
I don't currently have it up, and we wouldn't likely know the names anyway, so I guess it really doesn't matter.
yeah. One of them's
But
more something. Morel is the last name on one of the like Dominican shortstops, and he's huge. He's like 6'5". The
yeah,
Dodgers are signing him for around $1 million. The Pirates are giving him 1.8.
yeah. So one of them's already gone, but the other one is
Mhm.
kind of floating out there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, basically. So Ben Badler, and Carlos Collazo do their podcast every week. And Ben basically like indicated that the teams that are still in on Sasaki might hold their entire pools like past Wednesday and not make any signings. Just because like if they're in the running, like they need to make sure they have the money or the pool space essentially to sign Roki Sasaki. I kind of thought Roki Sasaki would just choose a destination and then they would figure out money after. But it does seem like you're going to have to give him like a big chunk of your bonus pool, which is like 5 to 6 million for most of these clubs. The problem is that puts a bunch of like your other signings like in limbo essentially, where some of these teams it sounds like are just going to let their players go back to market or try to get deals with other clubs, um, which is like a little bit frustrating, I think, for trainers in the Dominican Republic and people who have signed or agreed to these deals. It seems like what Badler said is like the issue, obviously is like team presidents, or general managers, even and ownership. If there's any chance that you're going to sign Roki Sasaki, they're willing to just, renege essentially on some of these deals that you've signed with players, essentially. So that's going to be the tough part. I don't know if that means like we won't see any signings from the Dodgers, the Padres, the Cubs, the Giants. I don't know, like whichever teams they think are in or not. But the White Sox were mentioned as a potential team by Badler, that could basically sign some of these players that are put back out in the marketplace because he basically said that like since they're under new leadership, a lot of times this happens, like they have extra money. I know the White Sox have always had extra money because they're bad at this, but this case specifically, like David Keller is very likely out in the marketplace right now trying to sign guys that are, basically being allowed out of their deals.
Yeah. I'm hoping that some of the fallout does find its way to the White Sox, but who knows? I don't know. We have to figure out who feels that they're still in this whole thing, and who's going to have enough money to even make a dent in something that
Mm.
he's interested in. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it just hasn't been the Dodgers this whole time, and it was just like a long con to like go to the Dodgers because I think that would be stupid. But I mean, nothing's gonna surprise me. It doesn't sound like he's gonna sign on Wednesday either. They said maybe like closer to the 20th, which is the following Monday. So, I mean, we're gonna know by midday Wednesday which teams have not agreed with players, right? So it's gonna be fairly obvious. There's no reason for the White Sox to wait, though. I mean, if there's teams that are not signing players, the White Sox should be in there trying to offer guys more money if it's players that they like. Something else that I found interesting, I know we're going to get into the Getz stuff. I mean, when Getz was on that podcast, he mentioned specifically that he had gotten off the phone with his international director that morning, and it sounded like they were like close to like closing a deal on somebody. So that could just be somebody else in the marketplace. It could be like a situation like this, but it's definitely worth monitoring because up on our site I have the 9 names that are like known. So if it's anybody different, it could be that person in theory. I don't really know.
Yeah. The whole thing is, and I don't know if you saw. I forwarded you the tweet, but
Yeah, yeah, from Hector.
yeah, from Hector Gomez said that Dominican scouts were saying, "Hey, well, you guys should remove Roki from the pool because
Mhm.
more Dominican guys could get signed." I was
Yeah,
like,
I
"Well,
mean, I get that. I mean, because I mean, it is a lot different than. I mean, this is a lot different than signing a 16-year-old,
that is true. Yeah,
and it takes money away from like those guys who have had deals illegally for 2 years now. That's what they're mad about, right? It's that, and some of these guys will go back out in the market and get more, right? Because a lot of times what happens is like these guys will agree to a $500,000 deal, and if guys get way better than that, like in the 2 years that they've been closeted away, right? Maybe they're worth 2 million, but it's also gone the opposite way, where you've guaranteed somebody $2.5 million and they don't get any better, and you never hear from them again. So
yeah,
the market's very strange like that. But these guys are essentially agreeing to deals when they're like 14 years old, so it could go two different ways, obviously.
yeah." I wouldn't be surprised if some teams that aren't necessarily realistically in on Roki Sasaki, if they dump some of these guys that they've seen
Mhm.
underperform for the last year and a half since they made the deal to sign them, and are letting their guy know, hey, we're in the hunt for Roki, so we're just going to go ahead and
Mhm.
pass you off.
Yeah,
you know Sorry, but we're trying to get this guy, and you know
yeah.
they lose out on a bunch of
Well,
money.
because I will say the Padres do have one fairly significant signing. I think that's like close to 2 million. Like if he got free, I think that guy. I don't know have the name offhand, but and then the Cubs have. I mean, they have their entire bonus pool spent. They have 4 guys, essentially. I think 4 Dominicans, all shortstops, um, who are like right up against their like $5 million essentially. So if the Cubs are to sign Roki Sasaki, like, and you have to cancel all those deals, I mean, those guys are definitely going to be going elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to be a problem for the top guys that get out, but my thinking would be that more or less the guys that are not going to get signed are not going to be those top guys unless
Right.
they've really tanked.
Yeah.
I just find that part less likely, I
Yeah, and the
guess.
whole the whole thing is sleazy, right? And I think a lot of times, like, look, if you can get Roki Sasaki, like you're probably going to do Roki Sasaki, but like these area scouts and people on the international market like develop relationships with all these trainers and people like for a reason, and now you're going to get a bridge burned potentially and not sign the guy, right? So the thing is, like, if you're going to burn this bridge, hopefully you get the Japanese sensation and then it's worth it. But if you have to burn the bridge and not get him, and then your bridge stays burned, whatever, and and you piss off a guy like in the Dominican who's going to steer his clients elsewhere. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Ben Badler's had a lot on it, obviously. He's the one that kind of brought up these issues. We don't truly know yet who's in on Roki. I think there's a lot of people in the industry who just assume he's going to the Dodgers and have assumed that this whole time. I just hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of our thought right from the get go, right? I mean,
Yeah,
of
I
course,
mean,
we hoped the White Sox were going to sign him, but we never thought it was a realistic possibility.
well, I don't know like what he wants. Like, do you want to be a star? Well, don't go there. I mean, maybe it's like comfortable to go there, but like you're gonna be like their number 4 starter, you know? Like it's just kind of like I don't know. Like he could go to the Padres and be like an ace like really soon. Um I just think he's in the shadow of other Japanese players like in LA. He's really really good.
Yeah, with the Padres, what he'd be with Yu Darvish.
Yeah, and you have Cease there for a year, you know. But he could be their ace going forward, you know. Like with the Dodgers, like I just feel like he's overshadowed quite a bit.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. But I mean, at least with Darvish, there's like some sort of you know, Jedi Padawan, you know, sort of parallel there. So you've got like a little bit of comfortability for him with a Japanese born player there as well. Obviously, with the Dodgers, he would clearly have that,
Yeah.
but it would also knock him down the rungs
Right.
of where he is in the pecking order.
So Vince asked, he asked where Sasaki's going. He asked me specifically, Dodgers, Padres. I'll still predict Padres because I feel like AJ Preller is a crazy person and he's not going to miss, but I don't know. Like the Dodgers are already clearing their money and getting rid of their top signing, so it kind of indicates they think they have at least a pretty good chance.
Doug says if he goes to the Dodgers, he'll get hurt.
Yeah, they haven't done a great job of keeping pitchers healthy, that's for sure.
Yeah, no. If he goes to the Dodgers, would not shock me if he got hurt because that's what all their starting pitching ever seems to do is get injured. So, um, do you want to move to the Chris Getz podcast and move to like what you thought the of the podcast in general?
I thought Chris Getz sounded interesting with Ryan McGuffey and David Kaplan. I think, you know, I haven't really hated the message that Chris Getz has had like over the last year. The thing that's interesting, I mean, I know Ryan McGuffey was very much against the hire, similarly to how we were. It was very insular, and I just, it didn't really make any sense. But since then, Getz has done a lot of things that have made me like it a lot better. I think listening to that, like, I think Chris Getz understands the assignment, and I think he understands like who he works for. But I mean, look, it's just going to come down to like, can they develop players and sign good ones like once they're able to or once they're willing to, right? I mean, it doesn't matter that his plan seems to make sense. Like the only thing people are going to care about is if they ever win again, right? So I think they've brought in good people. I think, he sounded interesting on the podcast. It was like sounded more coherent than normal. I like how self-deprecating he was, and he was really honest about the Garrett Crochet stuff. I thought they did a good job. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I think quite a few people I saw post were kind of unhappy that he seemed like a personable guy.
Mhm.
I thought that personality wise, I thought
Yeah.
that he did a very good job of kind of appealing to normal guys, normal people,
Hmm.
and not being aloof, and certainly didn't come around with the Rick Hahn lawyer speak,
No.
you know, which was definitely a positive thing for sure.
I mean, I heard people upset because he was like talking about the money and when they're going to spend and this and that, and it's like that's like not up to him. That I'll never hold that against him. I mean, he took a job and like, did he back channel to get that job and like stab Kenny and Rick in the back? Like probably. I mean, yeah, he probably was up in Jerry's office, like, hey, I can do this better. But you know what? Like from what I've seen, like I think he probably can do it better. So, um, he's brought in a lot of good people. I wanted changes to the international market. They've done it. I wanted a hitting director. They've done it. They've done a lot like in the underbelly of the organization. They tried to pin him down on how much he's going to spend. I think he thinks that he's going to sign a $100 million player because like that's not that much money. Like, I mean, it's just it's not that crazy. They're not going to have much payroll space. And I think this has kind of been something that people have pushed back at me. Like this year's going to be rough, man. Like it's not going to be great. Hopefully you develop some young players that you think are on your next good team, and hopefully they spend a little bit more next year. But I think the next year and the year after, like they're going to have no money on the books. Like they're going to sign players again. They're not just going to run a $50 million payroll forever. I truly believe that. So, um, there's obviously a plan, because I don't think some of these guys are coming here without a plan.
Yeah, as far as the money goes, I feel like there's not really a whole lot he can say that's going to make anybody really all that happy. But at this particular time, I think that it's probably a good frame of mind to be in, that they're just not going to be signing high dollar guys. It doesn't make sense with the window that they're trying to establish, um, because none of the free agents that are around are going to be have the kind of longevity that you're really looking for, unless you go and spend 300 $250 million. You're just not going to sign a guy that's going to be around for that kind of period of time.
Yeah, I mean, like unless you're signing you're getting ahead of the game and signing like a superstar that's going to be here like the next time you're good. It doesn't make sense to sign Anthony Santander right now. Like it doesn't. Like I've seen people like, oh, like Alonso and Santander out there, sign them and get better. And it's like they're not going to give up the first pick in the second round to do that, and give up international bonus pool space to like sign a couple of guys to be bad still. Like it doesn't make any sense. Um so yeah, that was the thing. I thought, what did you think about the story he told about his wife and the day he got hired, and like his buddies coming in? I thought that part was hilarious.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I mean, like he humanized himself in that podcast. You know, I think it's more so than um, just him having a conversation. Sitting in the dugout doing his standard weekly powwow with the reporters. This was like a conversation where he's making jokes,
Yeah.
and I found it to be entertaining.
I mean, that's like something you would say to a I mean, like his buddies were golfing. Like, so his wife, for anybody that didn't listen, like he basically said that his wife Nicole was like trying to schedule him like a 40th birthday party that was like a surprise party. And then he ended up getting the job on that day. So some of his friends came into town, and he said that these are his friends from childhood. So they always kind of razz each other and give each other a hard time. And they went out to a restaurant, and the buddy comes in and he basically said, like, oh, dude, don't go on Twitter because it's a bloodbath. And it was, I remember that day, like
It was
when Chris
not
Getz
good.
got hired. Yeah, no, it was White Sox Twitter was angry that day. So, yeah, I mean, I get it, and he kind of laughed about it because he's like, I think he understands like the way the hire looks. I mean, he follows other sports, like he understands, right? Like it doesn't look great. Like you're gonna hire the farm director, like after you just fired all these people, and your farm system's not good. Like I totally understand. I think the crochet part was pretty interesting too, though, because that's what it seemed like at the time. It seemed like they were blindsided by that.
Yeah, definitely not happy, and it kind of confirms what he was saying before, but it kind of reinforces a little bit. I think a couple months down the line. Um,
Yeah, just that I mean, they basically, he's hearing from other GMs before he heard from Crochet or the agent. Like, what is this that I'm hearing? Is this true? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, like, and it just basically tanked the trade value for the most part. I mean, he said that he still could have made a trade, and we've seen some rumors of the Phillies and some of this other stuff, but I think they did the smart thing by um making the deal with Boston. And I do think they created value with Garrett Crochet. I mean, like Chris Getz deserves credit for putting him in the rotation and making him the opening day starter.
yeah, okay, for what we thought we were getting going into last year, to not only the performance but what they got in return for him. I mean, that's like a complete 180 as opposed to what we thought we were getting last year.
Yeah.
Neither one of us thought that it was going to be a good fit with him as a starter,
Right.
at least in Major League Baseball, and he ended up doing it and being one of the best at it.
I
So
just didn't think there was any way he could throw that many innings. Can you pull up this question from Wolf? This one. So this is always interesting to me. So Wolf says it seems to me they're looking to follow the Milwaukee model or Tampa, Cleveland, kind of, but they can't really follow that model though as a large market team because you're not going to get the perks that those teams get, right?
yeah,
Like they get extra draft picks every year, they get extra international space. Those are things that the White Sox just are not going to have. Like I think the White Sox have to be like the Atlanta, right? Like Atlanta doesn't sign $300 million deals. They generally stay away from Boris clients because they like making trades for guys and signing them long term, that sort of thing.
I
You
mean they
know,
signed Acuna and then they talked Albies into signing for pennies on the dollar. But yeah, I agree. But like in the pecking order of who's signed the biggest contracts, they are nowhere close to the White Sox.
no, no, but the White Sox can operate like a true small market because they're just not. They don't get those kind of benefits.
Yeah, they do not get revenue sharing. They do not get the comp picks. Um, and as we're seeing right now, uh, they also get blasted in the draft and get blocked after 1 year instead of two. So
Yeah, it's really not easy to. They're gonna have to spend money, but they're definitely gonna have to develop their own like superstars essentially.
Wolf says he'll take Atlanta
Oh
8 days a
yeah,
week
for
for
sure.
sure. I mean, yeah, obviously the results, and if you look back, obviously in history, the way the Braves have
Right.
run things, to have a history like that for your ball club is amazing, and it's so foreign to what we're used to seeing. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, we would take that. While some other people would say, no, I don't want that because they only ended up,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I guess technically they won twice, but
I mean, kind of the way Houston does business, right? Like they don't sign. I mean, look at Bregman right now. They they offered him like $156 million, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, well that's as high as we're going." I mean, look, the White Sox have to spend like in the 150s on players, right? You don't have to spend on a $300 million player, but you should have multiple guys that are, you know, Andrew Benintendi level deals, like up to you know, whatever, 160, 170. Like they should be able to do that.
yeah, and I think I think it's been pretty well established that at least at this particular point in time, until they establish a culture where people actually want to be here, they're going to have to overpay,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately. So right now, and when they finally do actually start signing free agents of import, they're probably going to have to overpay a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely right now. I mean, and it seems like I don't know. I don't think they've had to overpay much like right now for like these guys that are like searching for jobs. I think this is more so like the White Sox are going to give us runway to play. But I mean, yeah, if it's next off season, you know, I don't know.
Vince asks if I'm saying that we won't make the playoffs 14 straight years like the Braves did under Bobby Cox. I wouldn't bet on it, Vince.
Would you rather make the playoffs for 14 straight years and never win a title or win one title and then don't go back for 20 seasons? Yeah,
Yeah, I
brutal.
don't. I mean, it's tough,
Yeah,
I mean, they went on like such an amazing run.
yeah,
Um, it's like every year you basically had them penciled in for 95 wins.
right.
Oh yeah, that kind of run, even if you don't win obviously the ultimate goal, and I don't think we've ever had this conversation on here, but the ultimate goal is to win the World Series, right?
Yeah, but it's
So
lots of fun summers though.
it really is. I mean, would you rather have 10 years of 90 plus wins a year and no World Series, or 8 bad years and 2
Right,
good years with the World Series?
right. I know. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, on the front end, I think you always take the titles. Like give me the titles, right? But in hindsight, I could see being like, "Well, that was fun. Like it was a fun decade, you know." Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, they did win one, but
Oh, trust me, I know. Anytime Cleveland loses, I remember.
oh,
Jose Table, baby. Or Joe
we love
Table.
Joe Table.
Joe Table.
We love
Mm,
a Cleveland loss.
yes.
We love a Cleveland loss.
Yeah.
You got anything else for this week, James? Is there anything that's grinding your gears that you got to get
No.
off your chest?
Nothing pressing unless you want to get into the NFL hiring rules. So, you know, not on the Future Sox podcast.
I mean, I'm not
My
going anywhere, but
yeah.
I could
Yeah.
edit it out.
Yeah, no.
Uh,
It's fine.
I mean, I can certainly, uh,
Oh
yeah, I
no. If
can.
you it's a fun like experiment if you go on Twitter and look at all of the tweets that I've replied to today and how many of them say the exact same thing. It's I have a problem.
I, you know, I watch your Twitter account to a point, and to me, it's exhausting just looking at that. So I can't imagine that it's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't there was a lot of Rooney rule questions and just people don't get it. So, you know.
Yeah, I don't need to worry about that at this particular point.
Oh.
But I am interested in watching this whole thing kind of unfold.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Should be kind of interesting. I'm wondering who ends up where, and there's of course that, but obviously we don't need to get into that. Uh, we don't cover all of the sports,
No,
thankfully.
no, no. I mean, there are still free agents like available, and it seems like now we're getting into the territory where Boris is going to do his short term deals, right? Like where he gets Bregman like a 1+1, or there's other guys out there. I mean, I know like we did a show where we talked about the guys that got qualifying offers, and I think one of the names we identified right away was Nick Pavetta as somebody who should have accepted. I
Yeah,
just I somebody really paying him right now and giving up a draft pick and giving up international space to do so. I don't know. That one kind of screamed at me right away like, dude, take the qualifying offer. And even like Pete Alonso right now, it seems like the Mets are basically like his only team and he's going to end up just going back there for big money on something short term.
yeah. I find it funny that the narrative that has been kind of popping up over the last couple of days is that the these big stars are possibly leaning towards short contracts, big money short contracts because it makes more sense to them. It does not make more sense to them. What makes more sense to them is that that's all they can get.
Yeah. And I do think like the qualifying offer is cumbersome even for guys that are good like at a certain point, right? Because there are some teams that look at Pete Alonso that are just like, I'm not giving up a draft pick for that. Whereas like if he came out next offseason, maybe some of those same teams would be willing to pay him just money and not give up the pick basically. So it kind of changes things a little bit.
Yeah. So speaking of Pete Alonso,
Did he just
Wolf
sign?
S been
Oh
hearing on
no. Okay. No.
shows and pods lately that first base is now a low value position. What's your guys' opinion?
I mean, in theory, it should be easy to find. I mean, that's why I think we talked about this a ton with the draft. That's why I didn't want him to take Jack Caglione because like I kind of want them to wait until they're good and then just sign a first baseman. Uh, like especially now. I mean, even like Christian Walker's really good, right? He got 3 at 60. So just get a bunch of shortstops and center fielders and build your team and then sign one of those guys like when it's time to win. And that's not cheap, right? But it's cheap enough for the value that they give you.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a guy that's going to hit you 35, 40 home runs, it makes total sense. And Christian Walker's great defensively at first base as well, which Alonso's okay, but you know, I think that it's you know very interesting to see what's happening with the first base market. We'll see. I'm wondering if the White Sox are ever going to sign a left-handed first baseman. We'll see.
Anthony Rizzo's available.
Anthony Rizzo is still available.
Available. Yeah.
For how long though?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yep.
Um, so you got anything else? You good?
All good.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. You have been watching / listening to the FutureSox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all our written content at futuresox.net, including James' recent international market preview. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at FutureSox, and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there is a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at futuresox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live while helping us in the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. We appreciate all of you. Thanks for listening and commenting in the chat. You guys drive this community. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are the best. And we will talk to you guys next week.